We knew very quickly that reports of an armed robbery in Martin Place were wrong. Hostages were lined up against the window of the Lindt Cafe with what looked like an Islamic State flag. I was one of a number of photographers and reporters who were scrambled from the Daily Telegraph down to the scene. When I got there, I saw a man looking very white and shaken. Craig Stoker told me that he'd just bought a coffee in the Lindt Cafe, and as he came out he'd bumped into a man with something hard in his bag. Craig had told him to watch where he was going. Monis had turned around, stared him straight in the eye and said, "Do you want me to shoot you too?"
I remember being in a taxi trying to weave our way through the traffic on Elizabeth Street towards Martin Place, and I could see these bizarre sights of cop cars driving every which way and what looked like army vehicles, and staggeringly I could see people in business attire running out of the city, literally like you see in the movies. And the cabbie asked me, he said, "What's going on?" And I said, "Well, it looks like there's a terrorist attack underway in Martin Place." And I'll never forget his reaction. He paused and then swore out an almighty F word at the top of his lungs and slammed the steering wheel. And it was a curse not done in fear but done out of anger. This Chinese Australian was furious at what was being done to his country. Then when I got to Martin Place, just an eerie scene, totally empty, but for SWAT team members running around with machine guns. And I remember thinking to myself at that point that this is a different Australia to the one I woke up in. The nation has changed forever.
Late in the afternoon I received 2 calls from within the Lindt Cafe from 2 individual hostages that were calling to pass on the demands of the gunman. The first of which was Jared Morton Hoffman, a young teenager who was calling. And you could tell straight away the gravity of the situation. He was trembling, he was fearing for his life, he was petrified. I remember asking him, where's the gunman right now? And he said, "He's standing right next to me holding a gun to my head." I knew the situation was very serious. I just did my best to just try and calm him, get him to relax, and just pass on the fact that the police were doing everything in their power to bring the situation to an end. It was difficult sitting back and watching the events play out for the rest of the day, just wondering about Jared and whether he would get out alive.
I was standing on a garbage bin 15 metres behind a row of 10 photographers on the corner of Elizabeth Street and Martin Place. I took that position purely because we're shooting uphill at Martin Place, and I was basically a little higher elevated. So if they brought the gunman out and put him to the ground, that I would be the only photographer that would capture the image. I had expected to see Monis, but instead I captured a much more powerful picture, which was obviously April and Ellie Chen running with desperation on their faces into the arms of Tactical Response Unit.
Ellie and April were the last hostages to escape for many hours. Then at about 2:03 a.m, I remember seeing a man in a white shirt sprinting towards our position, which is at the corner of Phillip and Hunter Streets. He was obviously distressed, and because we were focused on the scene, we alerted police, who went over and got him. And then it must have been the last straw for Monis, because we heard the first shot, and then from then on it was just hellfire. There was flashbangs, there was shotguns, and I remember the sound reverberating through the city. It really was sickening. And then a female police officer started sprinting towards us saying, "Live fire, get back, get back." And half of us were already on the ground because we were worried about getting shot.
It was just after 2 a.m. when we heard the loud bangs one after another, and we realised that police had stormed the building. We heard the sound of gunfire echo through Martin Place, and we all stood there in shock for a while. Within minutes of that, the paramedics arrived, and we saw them carrying out injured victims on stretchers, and they were obviously the lucky ones who had made it out with their lives, but there was a horrible realisation that not everyone had made it out alive.
Well, it was just a numbing day. Hearing the letters read out from Katrina Dawson's young children to their mummy in heaven, just to find the tyranny and in this awful, awful week. It was like a crescendo of grief and agony, and each word that was read out was like being punched in the nose. The tears just welled up. And at the same time across town, Tory Johnson was being farewelled. It was all just so bizarre and just so purely tragic.